Hello, my name is Janai, and my channel is called Karmic Fixer Tarot. And I'm just doing a little bit of an explainer. One thing that I've started doing is cartomancy with Uno cards. And I've been kind of devising the system, how my particular divination with Uno cards works. Um, I believe this is a thing. I think there are other people who divinate with Uno cards. I've kind of seen it here and there online. I'm not sure how popular it is, mainstream, if it's just kind of a little niche sort of thing. But I've gotten into tarot, I've gotten into cartomancy, the different systems, Lenormand also. And the thing that strikes me about cartomancy is that um, all of it originated as a game, as kind of an entertainment, a sort of um, just a way to gather together and learn the news of the day. And it developed into a system of, I guess, fortune telling or divination. And the thing that I always want to keep sight of is that at the end of the day, it did kind of start out as a game. And I think that the structures of the cards and of the origins of divination with cards, I think it's really important to remember the origins, I think how they started in play, I dare say. So I like systems that keep that in mind. Taken to, I've taken a divination, cartomancy, tarot, things like that. I've really developed a serious interest in them, but there's also that part of me that doesn't necessarily want to take it deadly serious. So I'm kind of a lone cartomancier out here. There are probably different schools of divination with different cards. There's probably an orthodoxy to divinating with Uno cards that I'm not aware of yet. And if that's something that you're into, something that you're well versed in, definitely feel free to, give me your insight in the comments and whatnot. And I'm very fascinated by that. But I think I'm going to go with a kind of intuitive sort of an intuitive kind of system for interpreting the cards. And using Uno is really interesting because they're the standard number cards and the different colored suits. But there's also the other little specialty kind of um, the other kind of sort of, I don't know what you call them. Maybe somebody who's in the interest of transparency. I'm not a massive Uno player. I've played maybe once or twice in the past 20, 30 years. And I remember walking away from the table really upset. So I know how serious people take Uno. But I have to say that I'm not necessarily an Uno master. So there are the different cards that, outside of the number cards that have their meaning in gameplay of Uno. But I think as far as divination, intuitively, they kind of feel like a different type of meaning. So this is just kind of an explainer for anybody who's interested. I think in the future I will probably be posting videos of me doing divination with Uno cards. I've done two videos thus far. One that I'm not entirely, I might not have been in the best mindset for it. I think it's still insightful, but I was still very tentative with that. And the second video that I posted using Unomancy, I found actually really, surprisingly insightful. So I think this is a track that I'll go down. And let me know what you think in the comments. And again, um, divination, cartomancy, tarot, things like that. At the end of the day, it's play. I think it's, I guess how people say something's for entertainment purposes only, alleged, things like that. And at the end of the day, while I use cartomancy, things like tarot and whatnot for just kind of introspection, self-reflection, just kind of um, sorting through what's going on in my head as a tool for self-reflection, tool for growth. But it's also fun. I also really enjoy it. As I turn over cards, as you throw cards, you throw a query up to spirit, source, whatnot, and the cards fall as they may. I think I enjoy because it's like a surprise from the universe. You don't necessarily know what cards you're going to get. And it's really fun interpreting those cards. And I think that it's a great way to tap into your intuition. And I've come to feel that as the cards fall, it's a really good opportunity to take the cards, as they come up. Um, so I'm very open to whatever cards fall. And so I would like to apply that to Unomancy, as I call it. Um, Again, I'm pretty sure this is a thing. Maybe it's niche, maybe it's more mainstream than I'm aware of. Again, if this is something that you're into or something that you've got a knowledge base or practice in, I'd love to hear your insights in the comments. She knows about that. So, without further ado, I'm just going to start kind of talking through the way that I interpret, the way that I do divination with Uno cards. So, I'm going to start with the numbered cards. Let me see if I can pan down a little bit. So, I don't have them in order. I have them sorted by color, but they're not necessarily in order. So, this is the blue suit, of course. And I interpret the blue suit to be in tarot, in standard tarot, my interpretation of the blue suit would correspond to the cups, or in standard cartomancy, correspond with the hearts. This works for me because, of course, blue, there's the association of water, which is also um, the sort of tarot association with that suit. Its interpretation as the suit of water. If you are into astrology, in tarot, the suit of cups is representative of the element of water, the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, and so I think blue. It seems like a pretty obvious sort of association. So this tends to be interpreted as my suit of cups slash hearts. So yeah, this is my suit of love, relationships, emotions, emotional depth. Um, Very relational card. Everything having to do with one's emotions, maybe one's spirituality, things like that. So that's my association with the blue cards. And next, we have the green cards. Initially, I was thinking that green might be an appropriate association for maybe pentacles, how pentacles correspond with earth in the tarot and things like that. But I actually have come to associate green with the suit of swords, or in cartomancy with playing cards, the suit of spades. And mostly I think that's really just kind of based on, at least the way I see it, the little triangle. I guess newer Uno cards, they have the symbols at the top, I think, for to allow for players who have color blindness. But yeah, I like the little association, the triangle, has kind of like a sword like pointed feel as far as I'm concerned. So I think that the green suit representing swords, representing spades, is I think it's appropriate. So that's kind of how I represent the suit of swords in Unomancy. The suit of swords being the suit of mindset, communication, let's see, conflict, things of that nature. A lot to do with the mind. Very sort of cerebral, very sort of strategic, and yeah. So that's what green represents in my system. And next, of course, the red suit. I associate that with the suit of wands slash clubs in cartomancy. I think this is pretty easy association to make, as this is the red suit. Um, get it right side up. The red suit, and the suit of wands in standard tarot represents passion, represents work, represents creativity, expressiveness, action. And so I think that's pretty appropriate. The association of red, I think, is fairly obvious, at least in my opinion. So we have the red suit as the suit of wands slash clubs in my system here. And finally, we have the we have the yellow suit, which I come to see as the Pentacles. I think probably the little diamond here is a nice association with the Pentacles. And also in cartomancy with playing cards, the literal suit of diamonds. So I think this is pretty appropriate to be the Pentacles suit. Pentacles representing a lot of times there's a very literal representation of money, but I also think of Pentacles slash diamonds as physical assets, as one's accumulated assets, accumulation of skill, accumulation of knowledge, also your physical health, accumulation of your physical health. So, in my particular interpretation, we have the yellow suit as the suit of pentacles slash diamonds. So that's pretty cut and dry, I think. Now, where I get into a tiny bit of confusion are some of the other cards. And I'm not entirely sure how I want to how I interpret these. I have a working idea, and a lot of it is very intuitive. But of course, again, let me know what you think in the comments if you have maybe a different sort of association with some of these. Um, and I guess in standard or in contemporary Uno, we have these blank cards. I would just use these as significator cards. If you wanted to write in a specific significator, um, maybe a person's name or a person's gender or whatnot, or a theme that you wanted to do a reading around. You wouldn't necessarily have to do this, but I think these blank cards would be a good way to do that. I treated them with tape so I could write over them and kind of erase them with like a dry erase sort of thing. That might get a little messy after a while, so I might figure out another thing to do with these. But the blank cards, I think, is a great idea as far as using these as significators. So that's what these are. That seems pretty straightforward there. And the shuffle hands, um, off the top of my head, I I guess this looks I guess this is pretty self-explanatory, maybe a reshuffle. I would take this as an invitation for drawing more cards, maybe more clarifiers. So if this were to come up in a reading or whatnot, I would maybe take this as an invitation to, draw a few more cards for clarification. But again, outside of the numbered cards in their different color suits, a lot of how I use the other cards is probably going to be very intuitive, kind of drawing from the rest of the spread. What depending on how the rest of the cards fall, I think they'll inform some of these other cards. But yeah, this shuffle hands, I would say, is maybe a call for a clarification. Now, some of these I might actually remove from my deck, but I don't necessarily, I don't know, I want to see if I can work with them as they come up. So we've got our wild cards. This strikes me as kind of a Joker energy. Now, there isn't necessarily a Joker energy in Standard Tarot unless you maybe want to consider the Fool, kind of that sort of energy. But if you're thinking of standard cartomancy with playing cards, there is the Joker that you can read however you want. I think the Joker is really kind of malleable. Um, it's been a little bit since I've done playing cartomancy, and I tend to keep the jokers in my deck. And as they come up, I read them as kind of like fool's energy, sort of kind of an open sort of energy. And I think the wild card can be that sort of thing, being open to spontaneity. And I think the color will. I think the spread, maybe the predominant color that shows up in whatever spread I do, might inform a wild card. Maybe this is a card to, maybe warn you of or keep you in the energy of being open minded, being willing to expect the unexpected in any particular area of life, whether that's unexpected in maybe your work or your passions or things that you're or your creativity, things that you're trying to get across. Blue may be a wild card in your emotions, expecting the unexpected as far as maybe your emotional life, relationships, love, things like that. Green, kind of a wild card energy for your thoughts, your mindset, maybe your mental health, maybe communications, the way you communicate or the way you receive communication. And the yellow, maybe wild card energy for your finances or wild card energy for assets, your physical health. I'm just kind of being on alert for yeah, for maybe unexpected surprises, unexpected news, that sort of thing. Again, I feel like when a card like this comes up, it'll be a lot of intuition, I think, will come into play into how this might be read. This is kind of an interesting one, as this is the +4 in standard Uno play. Of course, you get this card and you've got to draw 4 more cards. Let's see. I would maybe do a I would maybe look at this in a sort of the sort of numerological kind of significance. In numerology, the is a number four is kind of a stabilizing energy. It can represent stability, or in its shadow side, it can represent stagnation, being stuck. And I think I would base any interpretation of this card on maybe what cards are predominant in or rather what color suit is predominant in a reading. And if there's a more kind of even distribution of the color suits, maybe this is a sort of card that is calling for finding a way to get to a place of stability, rest, equilibrium, in all facets of your life, or or stop to see where you might be stuck. So the positive side, stability, harmony, is kind of place of rest, or the shadow side, where you're stuck, where you're stagnant, where maybe something is blocked for you, or maybe you're in an energy that isn't conducive to stability. So again, I think this is one of those cards that one would want to read intuitively if it came up. So we've got that there. We have a few more of these. +2. We've got the different colors here. And I would look at this in terms of numerology and also maybe its associations with traditional cartomancy. The 2 is kind of it's a card of new beginnings, a um, card of coming together, maybe taking small kind of positive steps forward in whatever suit comes up. Maybe looking into building intimate or building relationships, focusing on your love life, doing different or your relationship life, finding little ways to grow in this area of your life, whether it's relationships or your mindset, your mental health, the way that you communicate with others. The yellow, you know, paying attention to your assets, your physical assets, your health, your wealth, that sort of thing. And yeah, and also we've got you know ways to maybe broaden your horizons creatively. Take a look at things that you're passionate about, things that you want to get more active in, things that kind of light your fire, and take a few baby steps to grow in this particular area of your life. So that's what the +2, that's maybe how I would interpret those in a reading. And here we have reverse. This might be a card of reflection. Maybe something is, how in tarot, there are literal reversals. I know a lot of tarot readers and whatnot. Sometimes tarot readers will take a reversal literally, or sometimes they won't. Um, and these particular, in playing cards or Uno cards, you don't generally have reversals because the cards are created to be kind of double sided. They're created to kind of fall um, in a way where they're never quite in reverse, no matter how they fall. But I would maybe see these particular cards as kind of a reversal. Um, Again, maybe reading them in the context of the reading itself, whatever the predominant um, color suit is. Maybe think of it in a way of something perhaps blocking a more positive energy there. Maybe there's a delay, maybe there's a stoppage, or maybe there's something that's holding you back in a certain aspect of your life, holding back your mindset, maybe something that's really challenging your mental health, challenging the way that you communicate and relate to others. That could be for the green. Something that might be getting in the way of your assets, um, your physical your physical health, financial health, um, just the touching on the things of your material life, your material world here. Maybe something blocking up your your relationships, love life, maybe blocked emotions, or maybe there's some sort of emotional um, something holding you back from connecting to others, connecting to even yourself, or something that's kind of adversely affecting your emotions. And maybe this reversal, the red reversal, can be something that's hindering you creatively, hindering you work wise, career wise, something that's holding you back from doing something that you need to do, something that's kind of holding you back in a very specific action or whatnot. And again, I think all of these would be informed either by the predominant color of the suits in a reading, or again, this would be kind of this would be another card I would read intuitively. So yeah, a lot of these cards, particularly Uno, I think Uno is very interesting for calling on one's intuition. You're in the moment, you're paying attention to the cards as they fall, the different suits, the different numbers, and I think this will be a really interesting deck to use for trying to get in touch with your intuition, because it's not as there aren't the images, the associations that come with other other card reading systems like Lenormand or Tarot. There's a lot that if you're familiar generally with numerology or with the way numbers work in traditional cartomancy, Uno cards might be a good way to practice building your intuition, your trust, your understanding of that, I think. And last but not least, we have our skip cards. And I tend to think of this as maybe something that's being repressed, or something that you're trying to bypass, or something that's bypassing you. Maybe there is something going on that's keeping you from addressing a certain situation. I guess maybe in some ways it's similar to reversal, like a blockage, but just kind of this might represent something that you either need to let go of, or something that you had to let go of, and that maybe you need to, get back in touch with. And again, this is another, I think these are another type of card that you would read intuitively. But I see the skip as maybe something you're trying to ignore that you should pay attention to, or something that you've had to let go of, or something that you do have to let go of. Again, I think your intuition comes into play with the skip cards and for their respective suit, whether it's the sort of um, pentacles sort of diamonds energy, whether it's your kind of air communications, swords, spades energy, the cups or the hearts, your emotional energy there, or the wands and clubs, your passions, the things that you're active in, your career, your work, your expressiveness, etc. So this is just kind of my overview of um, how I do divination with Uno cards. Let me know again in the comments if you have a different interpretation of any of these cards. If you have any insights that you can offer me about how maybe you would interpret these cards, I'm very interested in that, and I would love to hear from you. And I guess that's it for my video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this is something that's really kind of been insightful for you. And maybe this will be inspiration for you to try divination with Unomancy, or with Uno cards. I call it Unomancy. And yeah, if this is something you're interested in, give it a try and let me know how it goes for you. And until next time, thank you so much for watching.